Hello, and welcome back to the sixth and final episode of the Life and Mission of St. Mary Euphrasia. I'm so thankful that you have taken the time to learn about Mary Euphrasia and connect her story to yours. I hope that it gives you strength and grounding for your future. In the last episode, we explored the expansion of the Good Shepherd mission with the founding of the Generalate. We looked at some examples of her leadership and ability to move through challenges. It would be impossible to talk about all of the stories and say all of the things that could be said about her life. In the reflection booklet that accompanies this video series, there is a list of readings and resources if you want to know more, and there is a lot more to know. Mary Euphrasia died in Angers on April 24th, 1868. By this time, Good Shepherd houses had spread to 110 locations around the world. St. Mary Euphrasia was canonized on May 2nd, 1940. Canonized means the process that the Catholic Church goes through to officially recognize a person as a saint. A lot of research goes into this process, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. Now, not all of us Good Shepherds are Catholic, and that's good. Good Shepherds contribute to and serve the mission from all different religions and spiritualities. The thing that brings us together is our history, our shared mission, and our shared values. That is where our unity comes from. And Mary Euphrasia said that our unity is our strength. So if you're not familiar with saints, that's okay. What I see as one of the main points of recognizing someone as a saint is to say to the world that this is a person worth recognizing. Someone that made a visible, positive contribution to her neighbors and to the world. Now, I didn't grow up with saints, and quite honestly, I didn't really understand them. They always seemed too good, like not even real people. But what I learned in reflecting on Mary Euphrasia is that it's not that saints are less like real people, but that they are more like the real person that they were created to be. They quite literally lived their best life. The canonization process can take a really long time. In fact, the first step in requesting the process to begin happened in 1886, only 20 years after Mary Euphrasia died. Of the 95 sisters that voted to make this formal request, 90 of them had personally known Mary Euphrasia, and that fact seems significant to me. 90 women that knew, lived, and worked with Mary Euphrasia said she was a saint. Now, some people did not want Mary Euphrasia to be recognized. They said she was prideful and disobedient. But the people that knew her best said otherwise. You can't hide from people you live with. Earlier this week, my son Joshua said to me, "Mama, you have been grumpy pants lately." And you know what? He was right. No one but him would know that, though. Certainly not my coworkers, not even my friends. But Joshua knows me because he lives with me. He sees me at my best and my worst. We can't bother with every person that has an opinion about us, can we? Not everyone gets to say the kind of person we are deep down because they don't know. Only some people have a view on you that you need to pay attention to. Mary Euphrasia, though a sensitive person, didn't need to listen to what everyone said about her. She simply needed to be herself, exactly the person that God made her to be, even if other people didn't always like it. After the initial request is made, the process continues with something known as the ordinary process and then the apostolic process. And after that, the Pope has to sign a decree on the heroicity of her virtues. Well, then comes beatification, which is the step right before somebody becomes a saint, and finally canonization. For someone to be declared a saint, it has to be proved beyond any doubt that the person lived the theological and moral virtues continuously and on every occasion, no matter how difficult it may have been, and to a degree superior to what others might usually do. In this whole process, hundreds of interviews were done with people who personally knew Mary Euphrasia. They were asked a ton of questions about who she was, her private life, how she responded to conflict, how she managed the organization. The people doing the investigation read all of her letters and conferences, and documents from the archives were looked at from the mother house. Early in the process, there was some opposition among officials in Angers. You might recall that I mentioned Bishop Angebalt in Angers. He had disputes with her for the last 27 years of her life. He consistently opposed her and ruined her reputation with some in the city. However, when it came to personal experience, no one who had heard of her bad reputation had any negative personal experiences to share. It's interesting that the bishop who made her life so difficult was in the end the thing that proved her goodness. During the depositions of her character, witnesses testified to the ardor, the zeal, the activity, the greatness of her charity for God and neighbor, her pure motivation, her devotedness and tenderness for her neighbor, for her daughters, for the penitents, and for the poor and the humble, her admirable love for her enemies, and her delicacy and heroism in pardoning all injuries. She knew how to cede when necessary and how to succeed with meekness. Her profound humility that no honor or insult could tarnish. And the list goes on and on. There was also an examination of miracles that are attributed to her. There were 30 that were brought forward as miracles that Mary Euphrasia performed. For beatification, which is the step right before sainthood, 2 were chosen to be examined and found to be legit, and an additional 2 were looked at for canonization. And finally, on May 2nd, 1940, Pope Pius XII declared Mary Euphrasia a saint. There are many things that I find impressive and amazing about Mary Euphrasia, but the one thing that strikes me the most is her absolute confidence in the mission that God had given her, and the steadfastness and faithfulness in being who she was created to be. Some of the witnesses who knew her said she had what it took to run an empire. She could have gotten sidetracked in her life at any number of points, especially when her bishop treated her so unfairly and harshly. She could have shrank. She could have quit. She could have argued and gotten all kinds of people on her side by returning the bad things that he said about her. No one would have blamed her if she had done any of that. But she knew what she was about and what was important, and she stuck to it. She believed in who God made her to be and was able to live it. A person full of compassion, strength, vision, patience, and zeal. That's what made her a saint. The mission and the gift that she lived with and nurtured her entire life would carry on. Good Shepherd didn't stop when she died. It carried on in the lives of her sisters, her partners in mission, the women and the children whose lives she touched. That's the very same spark that passed through the decades and is alive and well today. You might remember way back to the introduction video. I said that one of the things that drew me, that really hooked me, was because I learned what Mary Euphrasia had said, and then I saw people doing it and living it. And that's what is really important. People know Good Shepherd because of you, because of what you say, and because of how you treat others. I'd like you to end this video series with a few more questions for reflection and discussion with a small group if you have it. Take just a moment if you can, and remember a time when you experienced the mission at work in you. Do you know your mission and your purpose? Do you have confidence in it and in your calling to it? How can you persevere with compassion, strength, and faithfulness like Mary Euphrasia did? What kind of legacy would you like to leave? Thank you again for being here, for spending time reflecting on your life, and hopefully sharing your insights with others. And finally, I'd like to conclude this video series with the words of Mary Euphrasia. You are the roots of the tree. Be all goodness, all strength, for the noble mission is ours.